Hello and welcome to this BTFA alumni session. And in it, I'm going to speak to you about how I've used the BTFA model effectively across specifically GK and aerospace, but in more general terms across Philips, Travelport and GK and aerospace to deploy a lean operating model and make operational excellence a reality by engaging our people. Unfortunately, I'm not able to be there in person due to some family circumstances, which mean I have to travel on the day of this session. But if you have any questions, you want to reach out, connect with me and talk to me about this in more detail, feel free. I'm also going to upload this presentation onto YouTube. So if you want to refer to it again, or if you want to pass it on to some of your colleagues for them to watch it, then feel free to do so as well. But I'd like to thank David Bovis for giving me the opportunity to speak with you, and I look forward to being at the future alumni sessions. So for those of you who don't know me, let's have a quick introduction. So as you know, my name's Philip Holt. I am currently the managing director of my own company now, Leading with Lean Limited, and I'm supporting clients globally to make the improvements to deploy operational excellence, to deploy a lean operating model using my experience and the learnings from my previous companies. So I've previously worked for a number of companies, but the three companies that I've really been in charge of and led the lean deployments have been, first of all, Royal Philips of the Netherlands. Secondly, Travelport, who's a global distribution system provider for the travel industry. And then most recently, GK and aerospace. And I'll talk in a little bit more detail about the journey that we specifically had in GK and aerospace. I've shared a lot of my learnings on these journeys in my three books, Leading with Lean, Leading Lean by Living Lean, and The Simplicity of Lean. And all three books look at different aspects of leading, doing and living a lean transformation. The final book actually is Leading Lean by Living Lean, and that really explained how we used BTFA in the deployment, and it has a red thread throughout it of BTFA engaged and embedded into our way of working. So please, as I say, feel free if you want to expand on this to connect with me and we can talk about that in more detail. Before I get into it in more depth, I'd like to share with you a thought. It's one from Deming where he said, it's not enough to do your best. You must know what to do and then do your best. And I think that's really apt. There's many people who are trying very hard in their organisation every single day to do a good job. I'm a firm believer that the majority of people go to work to do a good job. In fact, in many cases, to do a great job. People love to be successful, and I think most people are working hard to do that. But often what organisational structures fail to deliver is the real understanding and sense of knowing what your contribution is to doing your best and making a difference to the organisation. So we have many people working hard, doing the best, but without the clear direction of how they should do that and what that actually means to the organisation. And I think we should reflect upon that as we go through this presentation. But one of the first things that I think we all need to know when we think about how do we engage our people and how do we help to make change happen is that Gallup have shown that the difference in having right leaders in place is absolutely clear. 70% of the variance in team engagement is determined solely by the manager. That's the direct manager. So our managers are the difference between success and struggle. We can put all the different initiatives we want in place, but if we don't have the right leaders who know what's expected of them so that they can do the best and have the right training and development to be the leaders that we need, we're not going to be successful. So it's really important, again, that we understand that. There is a significant engagement problem across the world globally. You can see the figures on the left-hand side, which show that overall globally, we only have a 23% engagement level. Now, there are different regions that rank better. South Asia and the United States and Canada are higher up on the scale, whereas Europe is extremely low. But even if you look at somewhere like the US or South Asia, it still only has 1/3 of people who are actively engaged in their organisation's success. And in Europe, it's only 13%. That's absolutely terrible numbers that we're talking about here in terms of engagement. One of the worst things is that there's a number of people, around 20%, who are actually actively disengaged. So we have a number of people who are not only disengaged, they're actively working against the organisation's best outcomes. And that's something we need to resolve in all organisations. But there is a silver lining. If you look on the right-hand side, you can see that Gallup measures its best practice organisations, those companies that it works with that have the highest levels of engagement. And what you can see is that, one, those engagement levels have been slowly rising, starting at about 52% in 2008, moving up to 72% in 2022. And you can see the gap between those and the lower level of engagement that we have globally or generally. It's encouraging that even the overall average has increased from 12% in 2009 up to 23% now, but it's miles away from where we need it to be. So what we need to do, all of us as leaders, is look at how we can help our organisation become one of those best practice organisations. Because what we'll see is when we have an organisation with people engaged, we'll be significantly more profitable. Let's look at it first of all from the organisation's financial metrics. We'll grow our sales better, we'll be more profitable. But also from a people perspective, it'll be a safer environment, both in terms of physiological and psychological problems. And people will find it a better place to work, so attrition will reduce. Unwanted attrition will be lower. We'll find it easier to recruit people. So there's a whole host of benefits when we have people who are truly engaged with the organisation. And to do this, or by doing this I should say, what we're enabling is that we ensure that we solve problems, remove waste in the organisation at every level. Effectively, what you're doing every single day as an employee, as a team member, is you're solving problems. Things are coming at you every day. Some of those problems you know how to solve quickly. We already have known solutions, known countermeasures, but a lot of the time we've got problems coming at us which we don't know how to solve. And what we want to ensure is that at what we call the team leader level, that first level of supervision, that people know how to do their job and know what's expected of them and have the skills to be able to solve about 85% of those problems every single day. Then at the next level of supervision, what we call in this slide the group leader level, about 15% of the problems are solved. Now, mathematically, that adds up to 100% already, 85 plus 15. So we're probably going to be slightly below that. And we're going to have a small number of problems, up to about 5%, that end up at the management team or leadership team level. But what you'll get from this is, and it's indicative, but we're trying to devolve as much as possible the problem solving down to the lowest level in the organisation. And to do that, we need to have people who are engaged, competent, and know what they are expected to achieve. And we do this through daily accountability and a tiered meeting cadence. So we ensure that at each tier, each level of the organisation, we've got the right people understanding what's the performance expectations, how are we performing, they're acting as a team, they know whether they're winning or losing, and they're able to solve problems as they hit them and then celebrate and build upon their successes. And what you'll see in this illustration is tier one at the bottom level. This is one team, or one set of teams, I should say, team leader and teams across, in this example, 8 different teams. They tier up to the next level to one group leader who owns those 8 teams. The other group leaders in tier 2 will also have their own team leaders and teams below them. And then that tiers up to an area manager and the group leaders, and then it tiers up to the head of site, function and area managers. And one thing I want to be really clear on here is this is often associated with a manufacturing or an operations environment. This is about a business. This is about an organisation. This is everybody in the organisation involved at the appropriate level in their tiered meetings with a real consolidation and understanding of the metrics that are relevant to them to make their contribution to the company's success. And organisationally, we can look at our whole tiered structure and understand how everybody plays their role in the organisation every day. And again, by having that engagement, that belief, that understanding of people together, those teams can make it happen every single day. But as I said, to do this, we must have effective teams. So let's think about what is the definition of a team. Well, the definition of a team is a group of people who rely on each other to reach a common goal or purpose. Just as in this illustration or this photograph of a rowing team. It's no use any of the team members trying to row faster, row differently than the other team members. They've got to work in unison. They've got a common goal and they're reliant upon each other. And that's what we need in a team. We need that reliance, mutual success, mutual achievement type of scenario. And by doing that, they will deliver high performance outcomes, because high performance teams can do jobs that individuals can't. They can produce better results in a shorter period of time compared to individuals working alone or individually. They create an environment for personal development. They ensure predictable output through team members supporting each other, and they sustainably solve problems through collaboration. So again, we want to generate and foster those high performance teams. And there's some critical success factors for high performing teams. And for those of you who've been wondering in a BTFA alumni session why I've not really talked too much about BTFA, this is where I want to start to bring it all together. Because again, the red thread throughout of this has been about how we engage people in the way that they think about things, the way they feel about things, how their beliefs are impacting how they act, and how we can work across multiple individuals in a team to get them all in a unison where they start to have that same belief in the organisational values, that same belief in the team, that same belief in what they're trying to achieve. And high performance teams will have that vector, that direction, the vision, mission, objectives, strategies and targets. They'll have a willingness, they'll have safety and well-being at the forefront, they'll be motivated, they'll have the right rewards and recognition, they'll have the right challenges about what's expected from them, they'll have the trust and the support of the leader and the peers. They'll have the ability, they'll have the right talent, the right competence, the right behaviours for the role, and then finally, they'll have the right process or processes in terms of standards, leader standard work and SOPs, roles and responsibilities, and a Kaizen culture that allows them to get better every single day at what they do. And hopefully what you see as BTFA alumni is that BTFA is absolutely ingrained in what we need to do to achieve these four elements of a high performance team. So we need to make sure that we've got the right organisational design in place to create the culture that we aspire to. Again, there's a lot of time that people talk about culture. Culture is used a heck of a lot. Most of the posts you'll see on LinkedIn nowadays talk about culture. It's all over the news. Companies are talking about their values and the culture that they want. But culture is not something you can just prescribe. You can't just say suddenly, we want our organisation to have this culture. We need to build an organisation and a belief in the behaviours, the thinking, the acts, the ways of working that are going to create a common culture that we can see is actually positive and additive to what we do as an organisation every day. So we need to make sure that our organisational design, our structure promotes that. So it then can promote behavioural-based safety in teams empowered and expected to live the value of safety first every day. And again, that safety first isn't just a manufacturing workplace type of activity where it's about the physical safety of people in factories. This is about the physical or physiological and psychological safety of our people on a daily basis. Teams that feel safe and in a secure way of working. We want to develop our leaders at all levels of the organisation, making sure all of our people have leaders who are there for them every single day. Remember that Gallup figure of 70% of our engagement comes from the direct manager, the direct leader. Creating an environment where issues can be openly raised and teams rapidly and sustainably solve problems. And then we need to make sure that we provide teams with the means to improve their way of working every day and their leaders with the skills to coach them. that Kaizen culture. And then finally, we want to be developing true ownership. Ownership is about authority and accountability. Everyone knows what they're expected to do and have the skills to get it done. That's real ownership. And we need to therefore change our focus of leadership support. Traditional leadership on the left here has work flowing down the organisation, problems are identified and solutions are mandated. We need to turn that upside down. We need to become an enabling support, flowing up the organisation so everybody every day identifies opportunities for improvement. So as a leader, we're trying to change the focal point of problem solving. It's really important, that focal point. Where are we solving the problems? Delegating or devolving that problem solving down to the lowest possible level, closest to where the work is actually done. And that changes the role of leadership in terms of how they think about their day-to-day behaviours, how the belief in what a leader actually is. A leader changes from being a knower, somebody who's trying to be personally successful, and that's where their focus is, into a learner, somebody who's really team success focused. And a lean operating model or an operational excellence model is about changing the way we work, act and lead. It's about that engagement of our people. Behaviours must be aligned at all levels of the organisation. And you'll see on the left-hand side the behaviours, the beliefs of a knower type of leader to one who's a learner. And an important one there, I think, is the I don't know, that's okay. Because it's about surrounding yourself with the experts who do collectively know what needs to be done. So building a lean culture, building a culture where people can be successful every single day is about fostering those two core responsibilities of a leader. Number one, making sure we have the organisation that delivers excellent results through our people development. And we need to make sure we've got great adherence to standard work. We identify improvement opportunities, we implement and sustain improvement, and we develop our people. And then secondly, we have to have that long-term perspective of the organisation. And to do that, we need to create the mental space to be creative, innovative, and entrepreneurial. And we can only do that when we've devolved that responsibility, that ownership down to the lowest level in the organisation, to the people who actually do the work, the most important people in the organisation, the people who add the value that our customers pay for, and make them able, through all the things we've talked about so far, to be able to do most of the work every single day on a daily basis so that the leadership can focus on growing the business. So how did we do that in GKN Aerospace? I've entitled this final section around making lean fly at GKN Aerospace, the habits that make change happen, because that's what it was about. It's about changing the habits. We have a tagline in Leading with Lean, which is changing the way you work, not who you are. And that's the important thing. We're not asking you to change who you are as an individual. You're great. What we're asking you to do is to think about how you as a leader can change the behaviours, the values that you've got that align with your personal values, but help your organisation to be more successful. So let's start with who are GKN Aerospace, for those of you who don't know the business. It's a business of about £3.2 billion of revenue, probably a little bit more now. The company's doing really well. It's growing, it's building its business. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. Around 15,000 employees across around 38 manufacturing sites in 12 countries around the world. All major aircraft and engine manufacturers rely on their advanced technologies. They manufacture aerostructures, engine systems, and some special products such as coatings and de-icing type of products. And the parts are on more than 100,000 flights every single day. Almost guarantee that if you're on a flight, you've got GKN Aerospace parts in critical elements of the aeroplane that are making your flight much more safe. So it's across civil aerostructures, engine components, and defence aerostructures. And the timeline, there's a lot on this slide. I'm not going to read it all out verbatim, but the history of GKN Aerospace's modern era, so to speak, is that in 2018, a company called Melrose, whose strategy at the time was buy companies, improve them and sell them, decided to acquire GKN as a whole group, GKN PLC, and they made a hostile bid for it, which was ultimately successful. So they bought GKN's businesses of automotive, aerospace and powder metallurgy, and they were organised as separate operating entities under Melrose. So what we did in 2019 under a brand new COO, Chief Operating Officer, and myself coming in as Head of OPEX, Operational Excellence, was we launched our lean operating model using our 5-phase deployment model. Not going to go into detail on that. Again, if you want to know more about that, feel free to contact me. But we use this 5-phase model, which has a people-centric approach to deploying lean. So very much embedded with that BTFA type of thinking about how do we engage people in changing the way that they work every single day in a very way that's positive for them. We built a lean centre of excellence, and by 2020, we'd launched the One GKN Aerospace approach, and we started to transform our business, simplified it from 5 business groups to 3 customer-focused business lines, and we created the civil, the defence and the engine business lines. And we got our first site through to phase 3 in our 5-phase model. So we got our first site that had put in place a really good model area and demonstrated the success of the lean operating model. And then, of course, as everybody knows, in the first quarter of 2020, COVID struck and everything went to shutdown. But the good news is, because of the way that we designed our lean operating model and the way that we designed our centre of excellence to be a federated group of people who were close to each of the sites across the world, we were able to continue at pace. And more sites went into phase 3 in 2021, and we started to really see the impact of what we'd done in terms of business results. We did our second cycle of Horsham Canry in 2021. We'd actually kicked it off in 2020, and over half by this point of our 15,000 employees were lean certified. So we'd rapidly developed our people to a good level of certification in the lean operating model. And we also started a new rollout in terms of our organisational structure to put team and group leaders in place, that first level and second level of supervision, with a talent process. And that was really impactful on the success of the business. And again, that was very much in the people focus, using BTFA to engage our people and to understand what's in it for them, why are we doing this, and how are we going to make the organisation a success through them. 2022, we recognised that some sites weren't going as quickly as others due to stability, so we brought in a 5 global principle approach. And again, it was very much because of our adoption of BTFA that instead of using a project management approach to how we deployed our lean operating model, it was very much one that was engaged in listening to the people involved, including all of the site leaders, to understand where they were challenged. And we realised that for some sites, the 5-phase model would be the ultimate end game, but they needed to be something in the interim to help them to stabilise and solve some of their biggest problems. So we brought in a 5 global principles approach, which was really successful in engaging them. And I think, again, a great proof point of how an embedded BTFA model helped us to be more successful. And then as a result of our success, we were able to start to go into our next phase of our Centre of Excellence, where we embedded most of the Centre of Excellence people into the business lines, which was very much with the strategy of our One Aerospace approach. By 2023, we had, I guess, what I'd see as another milestone, another proof point, in that we'd been so successful in GKN Aerospace that Melrose decided that it was going to change its whole company strategy and become focused as an aerospace-focused business. So they actually spun off both the automotive and the powder metallurgy businesses into a separate company called Dowless, and they've now focused on aerospace. And the final part of the One Aerospace strategy was completed as we shrunk the organisation, or collapsed the organisation down to this thin layer of value-added leadership at the top and the 3 business lines underneath them under that small group headquarters. So really interesting timeline and a very successful 5 years. And what did we do? What was the outcome? Well, we transformed the business strategically. We showed that the lean operating model was not just a CI tool, not just a continuous improvement tool, but a way of running the business. We created that people-centered operating model with BTFA as the red thread throughout it. We used talent-based recruitment to make sure we had the right people who knew what they needed to do with the right skills. We provided a consistent way of working, and we put in place the Lean Academy to ensure that the capability was embedded across employees worldwide. And we achieved significant business benefits: people engagement, safety, quality, delivery, cash, cost. So, again, how did we do it? I've talked a lot about how we embedded BTFA or as a red thread, it was integrated into the system. Well, this is a model, and this is my own model from Leading with Lean, but it's about how culture cannot be mandated. It can only be changed by intervening at the behavioural level. And I think that's, to me, was the real eureka moment about 5 or 6 years ago when I realised that way of intervening was to really understand how people think, and that we're dealing with the brains of multiple people. Basically, these people we talk about have got brains, and those brains have been wired in certain ways determined by how they've been brought up, where they were born, the culture that they were brought up in, the experiences they've had through life. All of this wires their brains in a certain way that makes them have beliefs, makes them behave in certain ways, makes them think certain things. And by intervening at that behavioural level, through a good understanding of BTFA, we were going to be much more successful at changing the mindset of people and ultimately changing the culture of the organisation. And I would certainly say with a high level of confidence that that's what we did in GK Aerospace. We changed the culture of that business. And I think probably the most beneficial way of saying that is that we enhanced the culture of GK Aerospace. Because I'm not going to pretend it was a bad culture. It was a great place to work. There was great people. The culture was inclusive. The culture was about achievement. What we helped to do was to show them a better way of achieving, a better way of doing things, which enhanced the culture. It augmented the culture, but it definitely made a significant change in what that culture was and became. And as I said, it wasn't without BTFA. In fact, BTFA was a significant part of it. I often talk to people about this and say, it even became a shortcut in our language in GK Aerospace, where people would say, if something was being done, an initiative, a project, an activity, a Kaizen event, and things weren't necessarily going perfectly at that point, or we were having a reflection moment, you'd hear people say, have we got the BTFA in this? It was a shorthand way of talking about the process, a very complex process, of course, but a way of shorthanding it so we could have that discussion about, really, have we got the belief? Are people thinking that this is the right thing to do? Are people feeling that this is the right thing to do? Is it, is their gut feel we're doing the right things, we're on the right track? And again, that was just so rewarding to hear people having those conversations and understanding that it's not just about plan, do, check, act. It's not just about project managing, putting a project plan together. So seeing people understanding that they needed to change minds, not just change processes, not just change, standard operating procedures. We had to get people to believe that what we were doing was right and then engage them in doing it. So BTFA just became that really embedded way of thinking and acting and believing. And I think what's really interesting about the BTFA model is it can become something that you really can believe in. It can be something that really you think is the right thing to do and that you feel is something you couldn't do without. And the way I act now is very much around my learnings and teachings from BTFA. So I do hope that explanation, that description of, what making a significant change in an organisation is all about has helped. And I hope the example of what we did in GK Aerospace has helped to really consolidate your thinking. And yeah, thanks very much for spending the time to listen to me.